What's up? What's happening? Travis Eldridge back with you here for Lacrosse. Now, terrific show once again this week as we have three more guests for you. We're going to hit a whole range of topics over the course of today. We'll start things in the pro game. The head coach of the now PLL champion Waterdogs, Andy Copeland, joining us. What it meant for him to win a title. We'll also talk about the magnificent play of Dylan Ward, how he continues to amaze both as a box lacrosse goalie and a field lacrosse goalie, a couple of championships for Ward over the course of the last several months. So we'll talk about that with Andy Copeland. We'll also talk to him about what he's learned about coaching in the pro game, how it can be different from coaching in college like he did at Fairfield, what that transition has been like for him, and also how he's approaching what could be a very interesting offseason in the PLL. Free agency really in play for the first time in the Premier Lacrosse League's history. How he's approaching that, the possibility to add some talent. Also, you could lose some talent with some of the things that are being put in place this offseason. So we'll talk to him about all of that. We then will have something a little different, talking with Steven Stamp, who will be on the call for the Baggataway Cup this weekend on LSN. The Baggataway Cup, essentially the championship weekend for Canadian field lacrosse for their colleges and universities north of the border. So a huge weekend of lacrosse here on LSN that kicks off on Friday. We'll talk to Steven Stamp, essentially everything you need to know about the CUFLA Championships, which are the Canadian University Field Lacrosse Association's championships, essentially championship weekend for them north of the border. So everything you need to know, players and teams to watch this weekend. And the university that's hosting it is Trent University. It's a special place in Steven Stamp's heart. Of course, he went there, but also he shares a very, very fun story about how he is personally responsible for the university's nickname, the Excalibur. The Trent University Excalibur is their mascot, their nickname for all their athletic teams. He's personally responsible for that name. You'll really want to hear that story, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And then finally, we'll continue what we've been doing here over the last several weeks, which is taking a listen and viewing some of our watch party interviews that we've been doing over the course of launching that new thing we have every Wednesday here on LSN. This week, we'll chat with Charlie Kitchen about his days with the Delaware Blue Hens. He talks about what it was like for him watching the 2022 CAA championship game just a year after he leaves. They win a title. He was very excited to see his alma mater and all his buddies have a chance to win a CAA tournament championship. He, of course, won a CAA regular season title the year prior in his final year on campus. So he talks about that and some of his favorite memories from Delaware as he is now playing with the Firewolves in the NLL up in Albany. So we talk all about that with Charlie Kitchen, interview that you saw first on Watch Party on Wednesdays here on LSN. But we'll kick things off in the pro game. Andy Copeland from the now champion Waterdogs joining us to kick off the show.
This segment of Lacrosse Now is brought to you by Watch Dingo.
So it's a month or so removed, but we have a chance to catch up with the championship-winning coach. We're going to do it. So Andy Copeland, the head coach of the now PLL champion Waterdogs, joining us. Coach, first off, I hadn't had a chance to say it, but congratulations. So cool to see the run you guys went on. What was it like to hoist that trophy at the end of the year?
Just unbelievably gratifying. It was kind of the culmination of 3 years of hard work and, kind of building a professional lacrosse team from inception. It certainly came with some challenges, but kind of 3 years in, being able to be the last team standing and doing it with like the best locker room and group of guys I've ever been around was a great feeling. So awful lot of fun. And now you got to turn the page and try to do it again. So that's the goal.
When did you know, because we were talking about it before, you guys got off to a rough start. You go through that winning streak. I think it was 5 straight in the middle of the year. I felt like you guys were maybe playing like the best team in the league. You kind of stumbled down the stretch, but you got it going then again at the end. Like, when did you know, hey, I think I've got a team that we could take this thing?
I mean, to be honest with you, I think it was all the way back to training camp. And even despite the 0-3 start, some teams, if maybe they're not wired the right way, like that can be really crippling to a locker room. And it wasn't in our case. I think guys just kept perspective. They stayed really positive. I think they knew we had a pretty special locker room. We just had to kind of get a few in the win column and kind of momentum's a funny thing. It's just once you have it, you really gotta try to hold on to it. And then what it does just for guys' confidence, both individually and collectively. And we were playing pretty confident there, in the middle of the year, as you mentioned, and we were just kind of confident in 1-goal games and confident in fourth quarter play. And, again, kind of those couple losses down the stretch in hindsight were probably a good thing, just because it forced some real reflection, and you just gotta fix certain things and have some honest conversations and, kind of lay down the expectations pretty clearly. And then all of a sudden just hope that guys play really well down the stretch. And then that first playoff game against the Atlas, I mean, we played some pretty good lacrosse there for a while. So then I think guys were, they were just confident going into the semis against the Whips, and that was who beat us last year. But we'd also played the Whips 2 previous times this year, and both were 1-goal games. We were on kind of the winning and losing side of them. So our guys had some familiarity there, and, it was another 1-goal game, but that's back to the previous experiences of just having enough of those on the resume where we were just able to squeak out a close one. And then, you had to beat the defending champs in the final game of the year. And Coach Towers is a stud, and he does an unbelievable job with any locker room that he's ever been a part of. So that was a tall task in itself. And then you're going up against Blaze, who's just a monster in his own right. And fortunate to be on the winning side of it. But it was a really, really, really cool and special feeling. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned the fourth quarter stuff and the 1-goal games. Like, in college, you see teams come back, but I don't think it's anything like the swings you see in the PLL. And I compare it a lot to college basketball and the NBA. You watch an NBA game, chances are somebody could be up 20 in the second quarter, but at some point it's going to get tight. And that's what the PLL feels like. As a coach, do you have to adjust to knowing, hey, we could be up by 3 in the first half, but no matter what we do, even if we don't do something wrong, chances are this is going to probably be a 1-goal game down the stretch, and we're going to have to figure out how we do a couple of key possessions in order to win it?
Yeah, you really just have to, it's that whole line, be where your feet are. You have to be really present. Even going back to that championship game, we get blitzed straight out of the gate. We go down 3-0, but it was kind of the same feeling. No panic, just stay the course. The 2-point arc is huge. You can score in spurts there pretty quickly, especially if, you got the face-off game going and you can do the make it, take it thing. And, our guys, they're just a confident group that didn't get rattled easily whatsoever. And then, it just maybe took us a little bit to kind of get into the rhythm that we were looking to get into. But once you can kind of hit your stride, you can, 48 minutes in some regard goes by super quick. But in other regard, there's plenty of time to kind of make some plays here and kind of flip the switch when you need to. So,
yeah. One of the players that I felt really good about winning the title this year was Kieran McCardle, because I remember him coming out of college. One of the reasons he's a high draft pick in the MLL, because he played on a St. John's team that no one thought was going to make a postseason run, and they don't. And he goes to Florida Launch, and he never really had too many opportunities playing the postseason in the MLL. Comes here to the PLL, hadn't had that chance yet, and now here he is, a champion. What's it been like to coach him?
He's the man. He actually just got into the St. John's Hall of Fame too, which is a well-deserved recognition for him. So he's awesome. I think it was his 9th or 10th year professionally. This was the first championship that he'd been a part of. During the 3 years that I've had the opportunity and the privilege to coach him, he's been our leading scorer in all 3 years. But I also feel like you've seen a real evolution in his play in terms of just being really clutch in the fourth quarter. Becoming a really, really sound decision maker, becoming an exceptional leader and kind of picking and choosing when he speaks up. But when he does, he has the attention of the entire locker room. And, the 2 times we beat the Whips this year, I think Kieran had fourth quarter hat tricks. And I think he walked off the field in the championship game being our leading scorer with 4 points. And he just, he was a steady presence, certainly, in my opinion, should have been an MVP candidate, but he's elite and doing what he's doing at the age of, 30, 31, whatever it may be is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's been a fun career to watch and felt really good for him to win a championship. You're closer to him than I've been. How does Dylan Ward do what he does? Because he goes indoors and he's one of the best goalies indoors, which is completely different from playing goalie outdoors, and he wins 2 championships this summer. Like, have you figured out how he does it?
No, but I'm not complaining. I'm so happy that he is part of our locker room. We made a pretty aggressive trade for him coming out of kind of the year 1 bubble, and you make a trade like that just because, one, you think he's a remarkable player. He's obviously won at the world, level. He has a gold medal, which, not many people have. And he has all those experiences that you felt like could just be beneficial to our locker room. And his presence in the cage, his presence in the locker room, who he is as a teammate, just as like a super positive personality. He's one of the few people I've ever met that really can just like totally galvanize a group of guys without like trying too hard to do it. It just comes really naturally to him. And he was remarkable, but we would not be world champions without Dylan playing the way that he did, certainly in the postseason. So I absolutely love the guy. He's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, he's one of the best, and both on and off the field, on just unbelievable stuff. For you making the transition from having coached college to now coaching pros, it's not always easy to make that transition and figure it out, like how that balance works. Like, how have you felt like you've been successful in making that transition, and how you approach coaching that locker room?
Well, there were certain things that I learned from the college game, both good and bad, that I kind of wanted to apply to how we built the Waterdogs. And, I'll start with just getting the locker room right, really trying to bring in high character guys. I didn't want to deal with any, kind of me guys, any toxicity, that stuff just can, when it manifests itself in your locker room, it can really become crippling. So we were very, very guarded about making sure that we brought the right guys in. It was a lot of fun, year 1, getting to draft a guy like Charlie Cipriano, who was a former player of mine at Fairfield University. So that was pretty cool. And then to answer your question, I if I'm being very honest with myself, I don't think I was a great pro coach during that first year, during that bubble experience. And it was only a 2.5 week window. So you didn't really have any time to like reflect and to just kind of like maybe like unpack some areas that, you should have done a little bit better with. But yeah, that's the truth. I think I probably had a little bit more of like a college mentality, maybe was a little bit more micro than I should have been. But obviously learned from that experience. And, we had a pretty aggressive offseason from year 1 to year 2. That's also when, kind of the PLL and the MLL merged. So we were fortunate there to get like Liam Burns, Ben Randall, Mikey Schlosser through those drafts. We traded for Wardo, for Brownie, for Eli Gobrecht. And then in the college draft, we also got Sowers and Walker. So, that kind of year 1 to year 2, I think, just from like an inflection point perspective, that really kind of got us going in a championship direction, and showed some drastic improvement there just with our bottom line record, but we weren't able to get it done in the postseason there in the second year. And then we kind of like skirted our way into the postseason this year, and we were able to just play our best down the stretch. So these seasons never go in a straight line, as I find myself saying all the time, but it's about playing your best when it matters. And we were able to do that this year. So a really cool experience, and something I'm awfully proud of.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you hit on it when you talk about your first year, because like I feel like there's a balance as a coach, especially at the pro level, of like there are guys, and probably a lot of guys at that level, they still want to be coached hard, but it's figuring out like and picking and choosing your spots when you do it, and when you trust that, like, look, these guys know what they're doing. They're doing all this stuff during the week by themselves to make sure they get ready. So it's like picking and choosing your spots. Am I right on that?
I think that's very accurate. I also think what you said about guys, they really want to be coached, that's also very accurate. And I think maybe year 1, well, part of me was maybe a little bit micro in situations where I wish I would have just kind of like given them a little bit of leash. There were also other times where I probably should have coached a little bit more aggressively and maybe been a little bit harder and just kind of like created higher expectations for the group. And I just, I didn't really have a great feel for, all right, what's appropriate and not really appropriate with these professional athletes. And, again, kind of only having like 2.5 weeks to kind of like work through that and figure it out was a little bit of a challenge, but certainly I'm better for that experience. And I think just, collectively as a group, we're kind of better off for having that experience there too. Because it's, in sports, the pendulum can swing both ways pretty quickly. So either favorably or unfavorably. So when you kind of got it going on a little bit, you got to make sure that, the little things don't lose their luster and you can continue kind of doing certain things the right way, but also just kind of prioritizing the locker room and making sure that you surround yourself with the right people.
So you mentioned prioritizing the locker room. This offseason is unique for the PLL in terms of really our first look at any kind of free agency. There's the trade window open now. Like, how have you tried to think about attacking this offseason?
Well, one of the nice things about winning it is you don't feel like you're in a position where you need to like blow up the locker room and make too many changes. So for me right now, the priority is just to try to look internal and try to keep this group of guys together for as long as I can. You never know what's going to happen with, retirements and, other trades, or maybe, somebody makes a play at one of our guys, or, there's a lot of different variables out there that could kind of shift some things. But right now, priority is just keeping this group of guys together, with the understanding that, we now have a target on our back, and, there are going to be other dynamics next summer in terms of the World Games and so on and so forth. And my man, Mikey Schlosser, who in the semis, unfortunately went down with a knee injury, like what does his kind of recovery and return to play and ultimate time frame look like? And, a lot of that stuff is just stuff that we'll have to kind of work through, but we got some time here. So priority number one right now, try to keep this group of guys together, and then just be very strategic if there is chatter of any trades, and then certainly when it's time to go through the college draft.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we can't wait to see what you guys do. That's a good thing about being king. You just try to keep everything together and just try to run it back and do it again. Coach, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much. And good luck as you attack this offseason. Looking forward to seeing the Waterdogs again next year.
Travis, I appreciate it. It's great to see you again. Anything I can ever do for you guys, just lean in anytime. I'm happy to do my part here, okay?
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. We now welcome in Steven Stamp, who will be on the call for the Baggataway Cup this weekend right here on LSN. Steven, we can't wait for this. It's the Canadian version of the Canadian College Field Lacrosse Championship, right? Like, sum this up for people who may not realize what this is, exactly what we're going to be watching this weekend on LSN.
Yeah, it is. It's the Canadian University Field Lacrosse Association Championship. So it's the final 6 teams. We had playoffs on the weekend. So the host team gets an automatic bid. That's Trent University. It'll be at their stadium. Then there are 5 playoff games among the top teams from each of the 2 divisions, which, first of all, is really nice to be back to 2 divisions. Last year, because of pandemic stuff, we couldn't travel overnight and things. We had to do 3 smaller divisions. We played a 6-game schedule instead of 10. So it's nice to have some normality back. That said, we had a great Baggataway last year with a Brock Guelph overtime game in the championship. But it is the Canadian University Field Lacrosse Association, teams from mostly around Ontario, 2 in Quebec with McGill and Bishops. We are looking, there's a Maritime University Field Lacrosse League that have their championship, and we've talked to them about getting them involved. And there is talk about expanding west to the western provinces of Canada. So we could have a true nationwide championship at some point, but for now, it's the more center of the country focused.
Yeah, and so this event, you mentioned Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario this weekend. Trent and Guelph, the top seeds, they get byes out of the quarterfinals. So let's start with these quarterfinal matchups that people can see Friday. McGill and Western, Brock and Bishops. You mentioned Brock as the defending champ. So what do you see in these quarterfinal matchups, and how do people expect it to play out?
Well, we'll start with the Brock Bishops, since you mentioned Brock as defending champs. They were just above 500 this year. They went 6-4. A lot of change, a lot of turnover in the lineup. Not the same powerhouse they were last year. So we'll see. They're good. They're still a good team, but maybe not quite the depth. That's the big challenge, right? When you have graduating seniors, is the depth of guys, of quality players. and they don't seem quite the same team, but they do have a good club. Bishops, again, a good club, maybe not quite the depth of some of the teams, but the East was such a battle between Bishops, McGill, and Queens and Carleton for those few playoff spots. Trent finished first and is the host, so that's why they get the bye. But Bishops, again, just beat Carleton on the weekend by 1 goal. They were trailing. Bishops was trailing Carleton in the quarterfinal by 2 goals in the fourth quarter. Carleton hadn't won a game in Kufla for 3 seasons. This year, huge turnaround. They've been really building towards this. They went 5-5, earned a playoff berth, and pushed Bishops to the very edge. So there's a lot of competitiveness, which is very cool. But Bishops Brock, I think, is a bit of a toss-up. Bishops is the second seed in the East, but Brock has so much big game experience. The other side is interesting because it's McGill and Western, which is actually a rematch of the championship game the last time Trent hosted the Baggataway Cup in 2012. Now, obviously, a lot of changes since then. 2012 Baggataway Cup, we had guys like Steve Priolo playing. There was a lot of folks that you'd recognize from other places. And over the years, there have been guys like Latrell Harris and some pretty big names playing in this tournament. And McGill and Western, McGill had to sit out last season, a decision by their school, not by the team. So they didn't get to play at all, and it was really tough for them. They have a new coach. It was his first season last year. They didn't get to play. They joined like a local club league with 2 teams. It was kind of crazy. So they're back in, and they struggled a bit and wound up in 4th place in the East, which hasn't happened often. And Queens had beaten them the week before the quarterfinal playoffs. But McGill then went to Kingston to play Queens on the road and beat them by 6 goals in the quarter. So McGill coming together at the right time. Again, a very young team. With a lot of change. They've got some very good players. Cameron McGinnis had 8 goals in the quarterfinal. Wow. He is hot. He's a big body lefty attack who's very likes playing close to the net. He scored when McGill played Trent in the last weekend of the season with a chance if they beat Trent to get second in the East and host playoff game. He scored this 1 goal to get them within 1 late in the game where he just took the ball on the wing and said, "I'm just going in." And he drove through one of Trent's better defenders and just went to the net and dropped a ball into the net. So it's an interesting matchup. I think Western has really come on. The thing with Western, they won 4 championships in a row from 16 through 19. Then in 2020, we didn't have a season. Last year, with the 3 divisions, Western, Brock, and Guelph, always the threats in the West. Western finished 3rd and wound up not getting to Baggataway Cup after 4 straight championships. So it's cool to see them back. So many new faces there as well. It's going to be exciting to see a lot of these new players who are really making names for themselves.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned the players, and I think anybody, especially in the United States, may not realize, there's some great college players, Canadians that come down to the United States to play college lacrosse, but there are also some great ones that stay home and play and end up playing in the Baggataway Cup. You mentioned some of the NLL guys that have in the past played in this event. Give me a couple of names, just a couple of star players and people to watch out for that we're going to see this weekend.
I would say this weekend an interesting one is Ethan Forgrave, drafted by the Saskatchewan Rush. He's from BC, playing at McGill, and he's been one of their top scorers. When they played Trent in the final weekend of the season, they had a bunch of injuries on defense. He switched to a D-midi role and was fantastic. And he was actually going head-to-head with pretty much Trent's top offensive player. He was just out there, and they're like, you take this guy. If we're going to have a shorty on somebody, it's you. And he did it. And then he would be out, if they had a power play and they have a man up, he's out there and still scored a huge goal for them late. I think he's very good. For Trent, you've got a bunch of guys who are so good. You've got Colton Armstrong is one, a 2-way midi, or he'll go up and play attack. But he's a defensive transition player for the Halifax Thunderbirds. So interesting because he played junior C in Peterborough. I remember talking to him. He asked me when he was 1 year, he said, when am I in the NLL draft? And I was like, okay, when was you junior? I'm like, sorry, man, your draft was last year and just nobody took you. He then went and played for the Peterborough Timbermen in the Arena League, had a fantastic season, signed with an NLL team and has established himself as a solid NLL player. So you've got guys like that, and Curtis Connolly, I think, is one of the great defensive long poles lately in Kufla, taking on the tradition of the Latrell Harris type. you've got guys. I mean, we've seen a Nick Tchaikovsky who played MLL. I think one of the best players to ever set foot on a Kufla field, and he was a two-way midi. And one of the things I like about guys like that and Forgrave is they'll play two ways, and they will stay on the field. You don't have heavy subbing. Like, you'll have some subs. Obviously, teams want to get their O guys out, their D guys, but there's a lot of subbing or a lot of non-subbing. Guys will just run the field. And I mean, you've got like Curtis Conley had 7 goals this year. He's not even an LSM. He's a long stick defender. He's a close defender. Had 3 goals against McGill in that game. So you've got a lot of two-way play and a lot of guys doing some very cool things.
I love that because, I think we see college teams in the NCAA that will run two-way a little bit, but it's short spurts. I think with the box influence, you probably have so many guys that are so used to playing both ends of the floor that it transitions to the field.
It sure does. Yeah, they're very comfortable with it. And you can see the guys, and obviously they're playing a field game. It's not like it's just box out on the field. They know, and some of the schools. I mean, McGill's always had a pretty heavy American influence. They bring a lot more American players in. There are also guys who go down and play in the U.S. and then for whatever reason it doesn't really work for them, and they come back. There's a player for Bishops that was at Robert Morris. That is back now. You've got guys who have gone to various schools and come back. And, it makes it interesting for some of the guys who see it's great for a lot of players who go down to the States, get scholarships, go whatever, and play U.S. college. But there's a lot of great opportunity up in Canada. And that's one of the big points that Kufla tries to make is, you'll get a good education. It's probably a more consistent educational outcome for guys in Canadian schools, and the level of play is very good. We're seeing so many players drafted to the NLL and guys going on. I mean, I've mentioned Latrell Harris. He's an example of a guy who he played long or close defense and LSM at Brock. He was an All-Canadian at both positions. He went and played for Canada in Netanya at the World Championships as a short stick D-midi. And he and Tyson Bell were the D-midis for Canada, and it's like, wow. And the difference he made going and playing as a short stick when he hadn't played with a short stick in field for 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, you see that guy's talent and athleticism. I mean, we've seen it on the floor at the Rock. It's just unbelievable stuff.
Yeah. And he's so smart. I mean, you see the lacrosse IQ from growing up playing box and the field game. And I mean, he's so bright. One of my favorite Latrell Harris stories, and he's not even in Kufla anymore. He's graduated from Brock, but I still remember when he was a rookie with the Rock, and he gets a breakaway on Matt Vince when they were playing. I think he was in Rochester still. And I was thinking, wait a second. Matt's his high school coach. Latrell was still in high school. Matt was his high school field lacrosse and hockey coach. And he's breaking away on his coach. And I asked Latrell about it. He's like, it was pretty weird, man. I'm like, is it okay to score on him? Well, I'm going to if I can. But, it's like, yeah, Coach Vince. And it's like, you can probably call me Vino now.
Yeah. Once you score on your coach, you go first name or nickname basis. It's not coach anymore.
Exactly.
That's an unbelievable story. Hey, let's talk about the top 2 seeds that get the buys into the semifinals, Trent and Guelph. Who's the favorite? I'm not going to ask you to pick because you're calling these things, but who going in feels like the favorite in this?
I'm also a Trent alumni, so
just a little,
but I do very impartial in the calls. And honestly, I think Trent would probably be the favorite because of the home team, which isn't always an advantage. The former McGill coach for 17 years, Tim Murdoch, has said he actually found they won their 2 championships under him on the road. And when they hosted a couple of times, they found it difficult because there's so many responsibilities you have as a player at home. But and it's just a little different. But I think Trent feels good about it. I think they feel good about being in Justin Chu Stadium in front of the home crowd. It should be great crowds. It's supposed to be like 16 to 18 degrees, which I forget what that is in American, but it's pretty warm. It's warm. And in the 60s, I think.
Yeah, we'll double check that for the people.
Yeah, we'll double check it. But it's going to be a very pleasant weekend, a little bit of rain, but that's not too bad. But yeah, Trent's got such a deep lineup. Guys like Tyler Hendricks, who's just drafted by the Rocks. So many players. The big question becomes who is available because NLL camps start this weekend. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to Mark Farthing, the Trent coach. I said, who are you missing for Baggataway Cup? Who's going to be away at NLL camps? And he said, well, we're not talking about that right now. We're not saying anything till that weekend. So that is one thing that comes up every year is NLL camps tend to start the same weekend. So if you're like Colton Armstrong, I don't think it'll be an issue. I think he's pretty solid with Halifax. I'm sure they would say, go play in the Baggataway Cup. It's a big part for you. But for a guy who's trying to establish himself, either was just drafted or signed as a free agent, it's tough to miss camp weekend.
Yeah, no, if you're trying to earn your way into an NNL roster, that certainly becomes a time you got to show up. By the way,
last year at the Baggataway, we were in North Bay at Nipissing University, and we had players driving up, like going to NLL camp, flying in, driving from the Toronto airport to North Bay together, 2 players from opposite teams driving together to get there. So there's warm up, and like I think it was about 4 or 5 minutes before the game started, these players come in from the dressing rooms, come running across the field, not like still putting their gear on as they run in.
You know, lacrosse, we've got some, you just do what you got to do to make the game. I remember John Grant Jr. playing in an MLL championship game on Saturday night and then flying up and playing in a senior box game like the next evening after he just lost the championship. I mean, you do what you got to do.
Yeah, I was calling that game that he flew to, and he came up to that, and they actually brought some players from the other team as well. They got together and discussed it, and the Lakers agreed, I believe, to let the players from the other team fly up with them as long as they shared the cost of the flight, because they have to charter a flight to get them up there.
Unbelievable. By the way, 16 to 18 degrees Celsius is around 60 to 62, 63 degrees Fahrenheit. So, yeah, beautiful weather up there, especially this time of year here in November. You can get kind of a mixed bag at this point of the year.
Oh, we've had blowing snow at the Big Eye. We've had all kinds of things. So we'll take the 16 to 18, and if there's a bit of rain, so be it. So
you look at this. What might be a surprise? Like, what would be a surprising result to you by the end of the weekend?
I feel like McGill's a bit of a long shot this year with such a young team, such a new team. I feel, and they are coming together, but I think it would be a bit of a surprise for them. Or Brock, again, as a team that they have to win their last game to get above 500. They both, I think, are longer shots. I feel like Guelph has some guys back from the team that got to the championship last year, but there's some change as well. And Western came on at the end of the year, so anything could happen over there. I mean, I just feel like Western, I look at it and there's so many new guys. I mean, they won 4 straight championships. They had great players. Cody Ward was a 5-year guy, one of the all-time greats. He's like, honestly, Sean Williams level of performance and achievement in Kufla. And, and he is gone. And now there's another Ward. I have to find out this weekend if it's his younger brother that's playing for Western. But they have so many new names that I haven't had a chance to see in person. And I'm really excited to see them play. So it wouldn't be a surprise per se, but just with so much turnover, how do you then stay so successful? But, it's been 3 years since their last championship because of the pandemic. So, I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. Before we let you go, I do have to mention, you mentioned it's this your school, Trent. They have one of the great nicknames of any college anywhere in the world, the Excalibur.
Yeah,
that's terrific. What's the mascot?
Well, there isn't really a mascot. There's the logo. And do you know? Have I told you the story about the name of the Excalibur?
No, we need to hear this.
Okay, so it's kind of funny because I grew up in Peterborough, about 5 minutes from Trent University. My mom was a coach for field hockey and volleyball there. And then they built a new athletic complex and created the whole athletic department. It had been there were some people doing things, but there wasn't really a department. So a guy named Paul Wilson was the athletic director. My mom was the assistant athletic director. And she ran all the intramurals. She organized all the varsity teams and stuff for their travel and stuff. And I was in, I guess, high school at the time. And she came home and we're sitting around the dining room table one night. And she says, we need a nickname for the school. We hadn't had a nickname for the school for years. It was just Trent volleyball, Trent basketball, whatever. So we're sitting there thinking about it. And the logo was the sword, like the sword in the waters. It looked like the sword coming out of the lake. I said, what about Excalibur? And we talked about it, and she's like, yeah, I like that. So she takes it to the athletic department, and they have a talk, and like, yeah, okay, let's go Excalibur. So that's how we came up with the name, was at our dining room table.
So wait, you are the reason for the school's nickname?
Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
Isn't that crazy?
There's like, I can't imagine there's many people on this earth that are like the direct reason for a school. I mean, then you had to go there. There was like never a question.
Right? I mean, it was like, oh, come on. But yeah, no, I had to go. And the funny thing is, I went to Trent. I was working. I started working at the athletic complex when I was 12 because
Right.
my mom was there. It was easy to go and do it. And then when I was in grade 13, which we had at the time in Ontario, the aquatics director was Carol Love, who had stroked the Canadian 8 the first time women got to row in the Olympics. And she was going to be coaching the novice rowing team. And she said, "Hey, are you coming to Trent this year?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be starting in September." She's like, "Are you going to row novice for me?" And I said, "Okay." I never even thought of rowing. And she asked me if I'd come and row. And so I did. And then I rowed for Ontario at the Canada Games the next year, and then rowed on the Canadian national team. And there was so much serendipity and happenstance and around Trent for me that it's there's a long history of a lot of really fun stuff.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. And you get to be back there this weekend to call these games here on LSN. Stephen, this was awesome. We can't wait to hear you on the call throughout the weekend right here on LSN. People can watch it all weekend long, starting on Friday. Good luck. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the nice weather. And hopefully it's a great crowd and some awesome action.
Thanks so much. It's always great to catch up and fun being on here, and really appreciate the opportunity.
So once again, you can watch the Kufla Baggataway Cup this weekend starting on Friday on Lax Sports Network, laxsn.com. Just stay locked into the Lax Sports Net social media accounts as well. Highlights will be posted, and they'll continue to share all the links and everything you need to know to watch every game of the course of the weekend from up at Trent University. Steven Stamp, of course, will be on the call for all those games. All right, every Wednesday here on LSN, we are throwing watch parties, as we've been telling you. Starts 8 a.m., then airs again at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, replaying some of the best games that we've aired here on the network for a lot of different programs and conferences across the country. In between games, we're joined by players and coaches that took part in those games, and we get some behind-the-scenes stories. We've had some great moments. We've gotten to talk with players and coaches about some of the great moments we've seen in college lacrosse history, at least here in the last 5 to 10 years, and they've shared some behind-the-scenes stuff. A couple of weeks ago, I had a chance to talk with Delaware's Charlie Kitchen for the Blue Hens watch party, and we're going to share that discussion with you now. So here's Charlie Kitchen talking about his Delaware career as part of our Delaware watch party from a couple weeks ago. We continue our Delaware watch party with former Blue Hen Charlie Kitchen. Charlie, we're coming out of watching your regular season finale from your last year there in 2021. The emotions around the 2021 season for you, your last year there with Delaware, what was it like?
Well, what was that? March of the year prior, we lost our season. The emotions were brutal. We didn't know if guys were coming back or anything about that. So, fortunate enough, we had a couple guys come back with me, and we all lived together. That was cool. And Jake Hervada and Ryan Shaw. We had Justin Scott too as a transfer, which is pretty cool. But I mean, the emotions were top tier when we were heading into the season. I mean, we played, I think I played 10 games, but we played 12 because I missed the first 2 because I had COVID. So that was brutal to start off the year. But let me tell you, I mean, every sideline we had was to go and win a championship that year. Obviously, we got it done the next year, but hey, we accomplished regular season champions after beating UMass in that last game. So that was amazing. That was another step in the right direction for the program. So it was amazing. It was a great way to wrap up my career.
You mentioned the championship here in 2022, and we're going to get to those games here coming up as part of our watch party. For you, what was it like to watch a lot of the guys that you had played with for the last couple of years get the job done? Like, I'm sure there's probably some mixed emotions. You're so pumped, but you're also like, man, I really wish I would have been able to be part of that.
Yeah, I mean, I was living in New Jersey at the time in an apartment with my girlfriend. And when I was watching those games, I was jumping up and down on the couch. But also, you have that little thought inside of you like, dang, I wish I was there for that, man. That was probably such a surreal experience for those guys But let me tell you, they earned it. They earned every single second of that celebration, and they made a long run. Man, they got all the way to playing Cornell and put up a tough fight there. But I mean, it was awesome to watch as an alumni, and I couldn't be happier for them as a team. Because we're only moving forward from now on. Ever since Coach Luca got there, we've progressively gotten better and better, and I see us being a top 10 team from here going out. So yeah, it's been great.
We had a chance to catch up with Coach DeLuca to kick off this watch party. What was it like playing for him?
Let me tell you, first season was my sophomore year. And I was scared of him until my senior year. He harps on love, which is huge. I mean, I've always seen him kind of as a second father in a kind of sense. He works us hard, but he works us honestly. You know, he keeps us on top of our responsibilities as students and people in the community first, and then we play lacrosse, which is pretty cool. And also, just him going out of his way to say that he loves us and doing all those other little things to show appreciation to the players makes us want to work harder for him. So it was like glue, that love piece and the culture piece was kind of glue for our team that maybe we were lacking before. So it was great to play for him, and I'd do it again.
You know, it kind of gives like a new meaning to tough love because he kind of embodies both. It's like the tough, hard exterior that like you don't want to deal with him if he's mad at you, but like there's also this like warm inside to him that like when he's getting everybody together and it's happy and it's good, like he's like kind of this soft guy. So he's got a little bit of mix of both.
Yeah, let me tell you, when me and him have definitely had some difficult conversations, but that ultimately found the right answer in a quicker way instead of just like kind of leading on people, which would suck. So I love that he kind of goes out of his way to have difficult conversations, but also after wins, I mean, he's the first person in the locker room dancing. So, I mean, it's great. I mean, I loved it. I would do it again. I loved playing for him. All the coaching staff, honestly, it's tough love in the best way. So, I mean, it's amazing for the players in the school to have them.
All right, so you had a chance to team up on this attack unit with a couple of Canadians in Ty Kurtz and Mike Robinson. What's your favorite part of playing with them?
Oh, man, it made my job a lot easier. I mean, they are just lights out shooters and they're lights out people. Off the field, we were inseparable, which helped everything. I mean, it only helped the cohesion on the field. But I mean, they taught me things that I never knew I could do. You know, they were teaching me different ways I could use behind the backs. They taught me twisters and changing my angle when the stick's still in my strong hand, which is pretty cool. So they taught me more about the game, and they taught me more about myself as well as a player and what I could evolve to eventually when I got to this level. So, I mean, I'm currently playing professional box with the Firewolves. And I mean, I played 3 months of box before getting to pro. So they kind of helped me with my skills and my IQ before coming into the season. And I still talk to them every day. Like they're my best friends. So it's really cool to have them as teammates and best friends. And Ty is now my teammate too in professional box. So it's going to be really cool to see.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you didn't like slip anything to the GM or your coach there in Albany? Like, hey, you know, if he's around, Ty might be a good option for you.
Of course I did. Of course, Owen too. But Owen is just too good, I guess. He got picked third. But yeah, it was great. I mean, I'm pumped to be back with Ty because he's one of my closest friends, and I can see him living in Market too, so we could be roommates, which would be sick. But he's got some work to do this season, so I'm pumped for him to close out the year, and hopefully he beats the amount of points I had because he's not too far.
So, yeah, one more year for Ty there at Delaware, and then he gets to hit the pro ranks. Favorite game from your Delaware career? What was it?
I always loved playing Hofstra. No, it doesn't matter the year. It's just because my brother was on the team. So we always had that sibling rivalry. And And I'd say, wow, there's so many games. I'd probably just say my first game of my career was my favorite, just because it was kind of like a indecision moment. Like, I don't know if I was going to be good or I was, it's just that part of my life where that turning point kind of hit. I think in my first game, I had like 6 points. And I was like the 6th attackman that fall. Like, I wasn't even touching the field. And then I got a shot at game day and I capitalized. So that was probably the best part of my career in college. Favorite game. There's so many favorite games, like tight wins. Anything a Hofstra and a win is great. But I don't know. I mean, I've never experienced that amount of fun when we beat UMass and becoming regular season champs. That was a really cool experience, and like kind of holding up a piece of hardware. And I never really got to do that. So it was really cool just to hold something and be around the boys for it.
Yeah, that's a special one. So we're about to show a couple of games for this 2022 season. And I'm sure you watched the CAA championship this past year. I know you were talking about jumping up and down. What your reaction when you watch your alma mater win the CAA championship for the first time, when what felt like forever?
So we have team group chats, and the first thing I did was text in that group chat saying, "Let's go, boys! Like, I'm for you guys. You better have a fun night." It was so cool. I remember I bought what was it, Flow Live TV or something, wherever they stream the CAA games. I bought that just to watch it. So I made sure I was tuned in and watching everything. The boys really showed out that game and showed we were the best team in that conference for last year, but they're going to have to prove it again this year. So.
Yeah, well, it's going to be fun to watch this group get back in action. Charlie, it was fun to watch you throughout your Delaware career. Congratulations on what you got going on here in the pro game. We'll watch for you with the Firewolves, and thanks so much for taking some time.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Travis.
So remember, every Wednesday watch party this week, we are hanging out with UMass. So you can see the UMass watch party starting at 8 a.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. Also then re-airs starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. So maybe you can catch the first half, the beginning of the day, and you can't catch the back half till later. Doesn't matter. All day long on LaxSN.com. That UMass watch party that's debuts this Wednesday includes that big CAA semifinal Hail Mary goal at the end by Dan Muller, where they upset Hofstra in the CAA semis, so you will not want to miss that. Dan Muller joining us to talk about that goal from midfield, and goal heard around the world, one of the best finishes we've seen in college lacrosse in recent memory. So you probably want to watch that one. Also stay locked in on social media for clips from that as well. So check that out on Wednesday. But for now, that's all the time we have here for Lacrosse Now. We'll see you right back here next week.